I don't know why I enjoy Silver so much. Like, it's like making a toxic character to be toxic and then everyone fall in love with him. And you're like, why?
That's how it goes. It's fantasy.
It's just fantasy. Do you think Aria ever went back to the hibachi restaurant after the date?
You know, two answers. Do I want her to? Kinda. Just so I could act that scene. But I think she's the type of person who would go to therapy and then decide that she was going to enact her own therapy on herself and go back to try and be like, I need to work through my trauma. And then it will go horribly wrong and she'll go back to her therapist and her therapist will be like, why would you do that? But I could definitely see that occurring.
So you said, do you? Because I was gonna say, do you think the hibachi thing should be canon, like overall, even if like the game was like you had your own boyfriend or whatever? Should that date be canon? Like it could be like, yeah, they did it, but they surely broke up because of that date. Like, yeah, she can't handle that trauma. So like it's gonna be forever in her, and then she ended up with one of the boys, like, or however that happened. Do you think that hibachi scene should be canon so that she could deal with the PTSD, or like show how she deals with it and XYZ?
I think there is a lot to be explored with that concept. It would take a whole different genre, I think. You would have to walk, if you were gonna go into that energy of like, okay, this has happened to her as a character, I think you would have to go into like those style of games that are introspective and their journeys and they're philosophical and sometimes they're depressing, and that would have to be the route you would go if you were gonna pursue that being a part of her, because you want to make sure you give that kind of trauma the respect it deserves in being represented properly. But whether or not it is canon in terms of we have not done anything past it, and as far as I know, there are no plans to do anything past it, I would say canon in this universe of Aria's Choice is up to the player.
Okay. Yeah, no, I was just saying like a total what if scenario. It's like, let's say like 5 years from now, like they're all about their like careers. We don't know who Aria's with, and then someone's like, Hibachi's like, no. No, like it's just immediate. It's like, what's wrong with hibachi? It's like, when we don't talk about hibachi. So, who would you say Aria's Choice caters to the most?
Ooh, who does it cater to the most? Anyone who likes a good old dating sim. If you are, you know, if you're hankering for every possible game where you can romance things, this is a game you play, because there's a bunch of different routes and choices, and that's not always an option, especially for indie games. And then on top of that, especially for a fully voiced indie game, like that's really, really difficult to find. Any sort of, there are a lot of AAA visual novels that are not voiced like this. And so, well, but still, like either way, you know, there's so much value in any sort of indie project regardless, but the type of work that was put into this, if you like dating sims, if you like romance, or if you're just down to play a new game, play it. Like, it caters to everyone.
I just find it so crazy that you do not like Ethan's route. I'm just kind of thinking, I was like, dang, she really didn't like Ethan's route. Everyone's always like, Ethan.
You know what? You know what? To anybody watching or listening, go play the game, take Ethan's route, and then come back and tell me how wrong I am. You gotta prove it to me, okay?
Just like, prove it. Do you think this should have been in high school rather than college, or you think college was the perfect scenario for this game?
College. There's so much tiptoeing and gray territory when you work with, even if everybody had been, if you go high school territory, then you run into like we swear everybody's 18, and I don't, that's not my energy. I think there's stories to be had there. I don't necessarily like placing dating sims in that age range. You can, if they are specifically catered to, because teens should have an outlet for them to see themselves represented in games like this. But I think that's a whole thing you need to be like, this is specifically who we're doing it for, versus if you're doing it for everybody and your like main audience is adults, then I always push above high school. But I like the setting of college because it gives you the feeling of like, being in the same walls as everyone and going to class and having a routine and a little bit of that like, gossipy, drama-y, relationship-y environment, but in an adult setting and a young adult setting as well. So you can be like freshly 19, 20, right? And still identify with the spaces that these characters are in. Or you can be 40, 50, 60 and be like, oh, I remember that. I remember.
Back in my day.
So, yeah, exactly. So I think this was a good setting choice.
I was gonna say, I just felt like college was a different pace because I was just very tired with everything in high school. Like, even the anime, it's like, oh, it's in high school. Everything in romance is always in high school. It's like, bro, what about college? Like, don't everything gotta be in high school.
That's right.
So, I have some questions in terms of like, what the dynamics with Serenity and Layla, because we seem to really enjoy that part. So, as I told you before, so like, Aria has like the heroine feature-esque, where she's like slender, brunette, XYZ. While Serenity is kind of gives the villainous vibe. So, like, have you ever played Final Fantasy VII?
I know of it.
Okay, so there's always this war going on between Tifa and Aerith. Because
oh yeah, that I know.
So like Aria kind of has like the Aerith vibe, while Serenity kind of has the Tifa vibe because of her body shape. And then Layla is like the third option, where she's like the unexpected, because like not a lot of plus size come into the picture when it comes to this. What are your thoughts on each of the characters' like white representation?
I can't speak too much to it. I myself am somewhat on the like underweight side.
Yeah.
So I would say that I think representation in all forms matters. And I would love for more characters to be like, we talked earlier about her accidentally falling into the brown hair, slender build, like that every sort of dating sim main character, female typical romances. And I think I'm glad I got to voice her, and I'm glad I got to play her. And I very much look like her, but I love when I see games and I see, anime and all this stuff that has other representation as lead characters. And it's not like, oh, look at us. We look at our main character. Look how cool and different they are. And we're, showing this as a representation. It's just, what do you mean? Of course that's a character in our game. Why wouldn't it be a character in our game? So I think it would be really nice to have like, and like you said with Layla, there are some pushing of boundaries and stuff. And I think as people go forward, just designing characters that have different traits, or are minority gender or race or whatever it is, or body shape, and implementing them in your game without a second thought I'm full support of it. Like,
So like yeah, so Serenity kind of has like the villainous type. Okay, apparently the villainous build is more like having the busty look, the more the perfect body, as they used to say. I didn't really think about it when that, but like that's usually what the villainous is considered, because I was just thinking about that when I was thinking about why is there such a war between Aerith and Tifa. Is because like one has more of like the heroine trait, while one has more of the villainous trait, regardless of their personality.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's psychology and social norms and stuff written into that too, where the Western media, at least, and some other cultures as well, but we have had such a push and a foothold and a root in like the innocent, gentle, sweet, you know, correct, in quotes, princess type is the skinny, white, blonde or brown haired, you know, girl. That's who she is. And then the villainess has to be sexy, because women who are sexy or sensual are scary and bad. And you know, the funny characters have to be larger and that kind of thing. And we have a big sort of, it's consumed and melted into designs and character designs. And sometimes you want it to be that way for specific reasons, because you're like, I'm trying to push this way or push against this way, or make you think one way and it turns out the other, right? But the more that we recognize where those are and where they're happening, the more we can be like, next time I do this, Aria's type is going to be the villain, and Layla's type is going to be the princess hero, and, you know, etc., etc. And that's one of those things that's interesting when we create. We find those little bits and pieces, and those are things that I consider when I audition for characters as well, right? When I get the art and I get any details about like personality and stuff, I consider what the artist may have subconsciously put into this character art, and where I can take bits and pieces of that and use it to inform my performance, and also to flip the performance on its head a little bit.
Yeah, no, when it comes to that, yeah, I think it's just because there's a mindset we already have. And so like, unless someone like says what they want or something, you're not gonna get what you want, or you're just gonna go with the flow. So like
Exactly.
with Layla's, I don't know, like with Layla's, I wasn't thinking, oh, she gotta be plus size. I just like, oh, she looks nice. Like I was just like,
Exactly.
oh, she looks pretty. And then you know, I was just like, you know what, if we're gonna have like a slender and then, you know, plus size, I was like, might as well have different body types, because I know you know how people say Twitter's a sausage or cessfest or whatever it's called. I don't know, but they get so upset if you put large chest on a woman. I'm like, I mean, some women are just built that way. So I was
That's
just
right.
like, yeah. So to me, it's just like, no, I just want to have different types of bodies. Like, it was kind of hard to have it with the guys. I feel like the guys, like, we couldn't really get their physiques all different. So like, I was a little upset with that. Like, they look nice, but it's just like, I don't really see like too much of a difference with how they look. Especially because
that's something that
their outfits cover.
You are 100% right? And that's, again, these are just things that we acknowledge, we recognize, we go, oh, okay, and then we work on them in the future, right? A lot of artists have a gender, in quotes, that they find easier to draw, and so they're able to more differentiate the character designs. And then when it comes to the other gender, they're like, I've never sat down and like looked at the different body types, right? Or that kind of a thing. So that's just something that we grow upon, and I do that with the acting side of things too, is like, where am I pulling stereotypes from that need to change perspective-wise? And there's just things we realize, and we keep going forward, and we grow and we learn and we change. That's all.
We live and learn. Hanging
That's
on
right.
to the tomorrow. I'm singing. It's a Sonic song. It's like, live and learn.